Nevada, February 2006. Red flag, the most advanced air combat exercise in the world, has begun. The skies above Nellis Air Force Base are filled with thunder. On one side, a formation of seasoned fighter pilots from NATO and allied nations fly the latest variants of MiG 29 seconds, Su-27 seconds, and Eurofighters. Some are veterans of Balkan air wars, others trained under Warsaw Pact doctrine. Their mission? Locate and neutralize Blue Air, a force said to include America's newest prototype aircraft. What they don't know is that Blue Air now includes the F-22 Raptor operational for the first time, and fully unshackled. It's just after sunrise. The mock battle begins. The Red Force pilots climb, bank, and sweep radar across the sky. They scan every frequency band. Nothing. The airwaves are silent. No radar returns. No signatures. No contacts. Then suddenly warning tones. Each pilot hears the shriek of missile lock but sees nothing. No threat in visual range. No heat signature. No blip. Just death. Kill notifications flood their instruments. MiG-29 splashed. Su-27 out. Eurofighter disabled. They've been eliminated before they even made radar contact. Hundreds of feet above them, in thin air, invisible to radar and safe from heat seekers, F-22 Raptors drift silently at altitude. The kills are already confirmed. The Raptors are already moving to their next target set. No afterburner, no smoke, no warning. And in the cockpit of one MiG-29, a decorated pilot from the Luftwaffe mutters a phrase that will soon echo across debrief rooms from Nellis to NATO headquarters. This isn't a fighter jet. This is a ghost. The Soviet MiG doctrine, forged from decades of Cold War development, was built around seeing the enemy, engaging early, and overwhelming with speed and numbers. But now they face an aircraft that doesn't appear on radar, that flies faster than sound without afterburners, and can turn inside their best aircraft with ease. And the most terrifying part? It can do all this before they even know it's there. The F-22 Raptor has arrived, and it doesn't just fly. It vanishes. It strikes, and it leaves nothing but questions. The MiG pilots once laughed. Now, they sit in debriefing rooms, stunned, because for the first time in their careers, they were hunted. Moscow, 1986. Inside the Central Aerodynamics Institute, a group of top Soviet aviation engineers gathers to assess the latest U.S. project leaking out of Lockheed's Skunk Works, a rumored stealth fighter unlike anything they've seen. The Americans call it Advanced Tactical Fighter, or ATF. The Soviets, by contrast, call it a bluff. General Valentin Makarov, commander of Soviet Air Defense Forces, reviews the limited satellite images and laughs. Stealth? Nonsense. A fighter cannot disappear. It must radiate. It must fly. And to fly, it must reflect. He isn't alone in his confidence. The Soviet Union leads the world in high-speed interceptors. The MiG-25 and MiG-31 are unmatched in altitude and velocity. The Su-27 outmaneuvers Western aircraft with ease. The coming MiG-29M will field helmet-mounted sights and infrared tracking. Why would they fear a plane that, by all accounts, prioritizes radar invisibility over speed? Their doctrine dismisses stealth as a trade-off. To reduce radar signature, you must sacrifice aerodynamics, payload, and performance. That might work on bombers, like the B-2 or the F-117, slow, predictable platforms, but not on fighters. To Soviet thinkers, dogfighting is about speed and agility, supermaneuverability, energy retention, not electronic tricks. They run simulations. They model RCS, radar cross-section, profiles. They determine that stealth fighters will be detected once they turn, once they open weapon bays, once they maneuver. The conclusion: stealth cannot win a turning fight. That assumption becomes doctrine. It flows into pilot training, radar development, missile guidance systems. Soviet planners build new IRST sensors, newer long-range radars, and advanced passive detection tools to catch whatever the West throws at them. Meanwhile, they point to the F-15 and F-16 as proof that the Americans remain locked in conventional thinking faster jets, with better engines, yes, but still detectable, still vulnerable. So the Soviets double down on thrust-to-weight ratio, on angle of attack mastery, on raw performance. They believe the MiG-29 and Su-27 families will outfly anything in the air. They believe America's pursuit of stealth is a tactical sideshow. They believe stealth will lose in a knife fight. What they don't know is that the ATF isn't being designed to win knife fights. It's being designed to kill before a knife is even drawn. In secret hangars in California and Nevada, engineers are building a fighter that won't just be hard to detect, it will be impossible to track. And when it takes to the sky, it won't dogfight at all. It will slaughter at a distance, then vanish without reply. The Soviet Union is about to discover that its most fundamental air combat assumptions, the very DNA of its fighter program, are fatally outdated. The future isn't about speed, it's about silence. From the late 1960 seconds through the final years of the Cold War, the Soviet Union honed one of the most aggressive air superiority doctrines in military history. It was a doctrine born from necessity massive NATO fleets, U.S. carriers, and ever-present Western surveillance demanded constant vigilance. The Soviet answer? Build fighters that could see, intercept, and destroy fast. The result was a family of airframes that would become legendary. The MiG-25, built to chase American SR-71 seconds, flew at over Mach 2.8. The Su-27, with its immense range and thrust, outclimbed and outturned the F-15. The MiG-29, with its compact frame and helmet-mounted sights, gave pilots the edge in close-range combat. These jets weren't built to evade detection. They were built to own detection with powerful radars, tight formation flying, and GCI, ground-controlled interception, guiding them from below. In theory, it was seamless. Early detection from radar stations would feed vector paths to MiGs. Pilots would engage targets at long range using semi-active missiles, then close in for a high-G kill if needed. The USSR had tens of thousands of trained pilots, rotating patrols, and hundreds of runways across Eurasia. But the system had one fatal assumption: the enemy would be visible. Soviet doctrine never seriously considered a scenario in which enemy fighters could operate at Mach speeds, maneuver in 3 dimensions, and engage from standoff distances without ever showing up on radar. It didn't account for an aircraft with a radar cross-section smaller than a marble proper, a jet capable of supercruise breaking the sound barrier without afterburners, a fire control system so advanced it could launch AMRAAMs before the enemy even knew it was there. Soviet air strategy lived in the realm of geometry and kinetics. They measured kill zones in turning radii, radar cones, and missile envelopes. Their ace in the hole was the close-range merge, the knife fight, because at the merge, stealth died. At the merge, radar cross-section didn't matter. At the merge, it was stick and rudder, angle of attack, and G-force. Soviet pilots trained relentlessly for that moment. What they didn't know was that the merge was being erased. The Americans weren't building a jet to fight within 1,000 meters. They were building a jet to end the fight at 100 kilometers before a Soviet pilot even touched his controls. When the F-22 entered the picture, it didn't need to outturn a MiG. It just needed to see the MiG 10 seconds earlier and shoot first. Suddenly, every radar-guided assumption of Soviet doctrine became obsolete. Close combat was over. The intercept triangle was broken. And all those high-G turns? Useless if you never see who killed you. It's April 1997. The location is undisclosed, likely deep within the restricted Nevada test and training range. Only a handful of top brass and cleared test pilots are present. There are no reporters, no spectators, just a row of hardened shelters, radar arrays, and a single concrete runway leading into 10,000 square miles of open airspace. At the far end of the tarmac sits the jet most of the world still thinks is theoretical, F-22, the prototype of what will become the F-22 Raptor. Across the sky, a group of legacy fighters begins their approach. Some are American F-15 seconds and F-16 seconds. Others have been acquired through foreign training programs and represent MiG-29 seconds and Su-27 seconds, operated by experienced pilots simulating adversary tactics. These jets are fast, agile, and battle-tested. The goal? Test the YF-22's effectiveness in mock engagements against top fourth-generation fighters. The expectations? Mixed at best. No one, not even the Americans, fully believes the prototype can outrun, outclimb, outturn, and evade the best jets of the Cold War. Not in the same airspace. Not simultaneously. But within minutes, everything changes. As the exercise begins, the YF-22 disappears from enemy radar. Its radar cross-section, thanks to advanced stealth shaping and radar-absorbent materials, is estimated at 0.0001 square meters. Smaller than a hummingbird. Smaller than a steel ball bearing. One by one, F-15 and MiG-29 pilots lose contact. Then missile tone. They've been painted, locked by something they still cannot see. The kill calls roll in. F-15 down. MiG-29 splash 1. Su-27 disabled. All before a single turn is made. All before visual contact is achieved. Observers in the control room stare in stunned silence. The YF-22 isn't just surviving, it's killing everything. It moves like a ghost. Accelerates without afterburners. Supercruises at Mach 1.7 without even registering on legacy radar bands. And when it turns, it uses thrust vectoring to pivot at angles that leave every other jet in the dust. But then comes the final nail, a series of close-range engagements. Even here, where Soviet doctrine expected to dominate the YF-22, remains untouchable. Its AIM-9X missiles cue directly from the pilot's helmet. Its thrust vectoring engine allows it to maintain angle of attack at near-zero airspeed. It executes maneuvers that leave traditional jets stalling, then fires before they even recover. One exercise summary reads, YF-22 scored simulated kills at all ranges. It evaded detection, out-accelerated interceptors, and defeated legacy fighters in dogfight conditions. 0 simulated losses. For the first time, the engineers watching realize they're not looking at an evolution. They're witnessing a break in the air combat timeline. Not fifth generation. Not next gen. Something else. Something impossible. The MiG-29 was built to out-dogfight the F-15. The Su-27 was built to dominate NATO skies. But the YF-22 doesn't play by the rules those jets were built for. It writes new rules and wins before anyone else even opens the book. Back in Russia, the initial reports from Western test ranges are met with silence, and then laughter. In military briefings and defense journals, the F-22 prototype is ridiculed as an overambitious American experiment. Too expensive, too complex, too delicate for real war. Soviet-era generals who'd cut their teeth in the skies over Afghanistan and along the Fulda Gap scoff at the idea that a stealth aircraft could outperform maneuverable, combat-hardened jets like the MiG-29 or Su-27. General Semyonov, former air defense strategist for the Western Military District, shrugs off NATO reports in a televised roundtable. The Americans are building a gold-plated fighter that will spend more time in hangars than in the sky. Let them waste their budget. The Russian press echoes the sentiment. Krasnaya Zvezda, the military's official newspaper, runs an editorial titled The Flying Mirage, claiming the F-22 is more fantasy than force. Russian defense doctrine at the time is already shifting toward economy and sustainability. The collapse of the USSR has left budgets slashed, factories shuttered, and fuel rationed. Any talk of an American $120 million per unit fighter is dismissed as unsustainable madness. Behind the scenes, however, there is concern. Sukhoi engineers studying leaked specifications of the F-22 begin noticing something terrifying. They see no afterburner needed to cruise at supersonic speeds, a radar-absorbent skin that degrades enemy tracking range by over 95%, an integrated electronic warfare suite that can jam, spoof, and blind radar without external pods. Yet these warnings are buried under bureaucracy and pride. Even within Russian aerospace circles, many cling to the belief that stealth is a gimmick, effective only against low-frequency radar or outdated SAM sites. Instructors at the Zhukovsky Air Force Engineering Academy still teach that high-G maneuvers and infrared search and track systems, IRST, will always counter stealth fighters once visual range is achieved. But that's the flaw, because visual range never comes. In NATO's Red Flag exercises, foreign pilots, some of them veterans of former Warsaw Pact air forces, are returning with troubling accounts. The Raptor never showed up on radar. We never even got within missile range. It fought us with one wing tied behind its back, and still won. American briefings reveal simulated kill ratios of 108-0. Still, Moscow refuses to shift. Instead of preparing a 5th-gen answer, Russian planners double down on upgrades to 4th-gen jets. The Su-30 MKI, the MiG-35, they're billed as stopgaps, more affordable, more practical. And meanwhile, the F-22 is entering production, not in theory, not as a tech demonstrator, as a combat-ready aircraft. The Soviets once believed their MiGs would sweep the skies, that the F-22 would be grounded by maintenance or outflown by maneuver. But in dismissing the Raptor, they missed the real danger. Because the F-22 wasn't a fragile experiment. It was a machine built to be unseen, to strike before response, and to dominate without contest. And by the time they took it seriously, it was already airborne. By the early 2000s, Russian air theorists shift focus. They no longer claim the F-22 is imaginary or unviable. That denial has collapsed under the weight of red flag data and foreign pilot debriefs. But a new theory emerges, one designed to soothe egos and protect legacy systems. Stealth loses up close. Instructors at Lipetsk Air Base begin updating training modules. They teach that stealth fighters like the F-22 may excel in long-range engagements, but at close range, they become just another jet. Without radar dominance, without range advantage, they argue, the fight resets, and in a dogfight, Russian aircraft win. They double down on infrared search and track, IRST, systems passive sensors that can detect the heat signature of an aircraft without radar emissions. They refine high off-boresight missile tactics, helmet-mounted cueing systems, and thrust vector maneuvers. The logic is simple. If a MiG-29 or Su-27 can force a merge, can survive long enough to close the distance, then the Raptor's advantage disappears. They're wrong. In simulated close-range engagements, the F-22 proves it's not just stealthy, it's lethal in the merge. At Nellis, U.S., pilots run visual-range dogfights against legacy aircraft. Observers from Allied air forces take notes. The Raptors don't just survive, they dominate. Why? Because while the MiG-29 can pull high G-turns, the F-22 can pivot mid-air. Its thrust vectoring nozzles allow it to manipulate direction without needing airflow. It performs the Herbst maneuver, the J-turn, the power loop, all impossible for conventional jets. It bleeds speed, reverses direction, and gets guns on target faster than any 4th-gen fighter in the sky. One pilot describes it bluntly. It can stop in mid-air, rotate, and kill you before you finish your turn. The Raptor also isn't flying blind in close range. Its sensor fusion provides 360-degree awareness, pulling data from radar, infrared sensors, and satellite uplinks. Even when within visual range, the F-22 knows exactly where its enemies are. Russian IRST systems, by contrast, are directional, low resolution, and prone to false positives. In a dynamic dogfight, they're a supplement, not a replacement for radar. Worse still for the Russians, the Raptor's electronic warfare suite can blind or jam incoming heat-seeking missiles, denying even IR-guided shots. By 2005, U.S. red flag exercises reveal something that Russian planners had hoped wouldn't be true. Even at knife-fight distance, the Raptor is untouchable. It doesn't just survive merges, it thrives in them. It uses them as bait, luring enemy jets into a turning battle they think they can win, then exploiting angles no other aircraft can replicate. The idea that visual range neutralizes stealth is shattered, because by the time a MiG sees a Raptor visually, it's already too late. The Raptor has the angle, the shot, and a missile on the way. It doesn't need to hide anymore. It just finishes the fight. With the dogfight myth crushed, Russian analysts grasp for a new angle, a technical workaround, a vulnerability they can exploit. The prevailing theory becomes, stealth is directional. If the F-22 is invisible from the front, maybe it can still be tracked from the side, above, or behind. Stealth, they claim, is only effective within a narrow radar cone. Flank the Raptor, catch it from an unexpected angle, and it becomes just another blip on the screen. Russian radar engineers begin updating their systems. They develop multi-band radar arrays, experiment with L-band and VHF systems, and introduce wider scanning angles in radar systems like the bars and Urbaz on Su-30 and Su-35 fighters. But none of it works, because the theory is fatally flawed. The F-22 isn't just stealthy head-on. Its three-dimensional design is optimized to reduce radar cross-section from every direction. Its internal weapons bays eliminate drag and radar reflection from external pylons. Its engine inlets are shielded and shaped to hide turbine blades, the most radar-reflective parts of any fighter. Even its tail fins and cockpit canopy are angled and coated to deflect radar waves in all directions. In fact, its radar cross-section remains near zero from almost every angle. In testing, even when turning or diving, the Raptor simply doesn't appear. And worse for adversaries, they can't flank what they can't find. To get to the side or rear of the Raptor, you'd have to first detect it, but the Raptor detects you long before you ever get close. Its AESA radar, the APG-77, doesn't just passively scan, it forms narrow beams, targeting multiple enemies simultaneously while remaining nearly undetectable. It acts like a sniper in the electromagnetic spectrum. No warning, no trace. The F-22 also carries integrated radar warning receivers, infrared sensors, and a digital threat library. If an enemy does light up their radar in an attempt to catch a glint of the Raptor, the system identifies the emission source, pinpoints its location, and prioritizes it for elimination. But the final nail in the second wrong theory? The F-22 doesn't need angles. It changes them mid-flight. Its pitch and yaw control via thrust vectoring gives it super maneuverability in 3 dimensions. It doesn't just bank and turn, it rotates, bleeds speed without stalling, and flips orientation faster than any MiG or Sukhoi can track. At one red flag exercise, an observer documents a moment when a Raptor performs a Cobra-like maneuver, halts its forward motion mid-air, pivots, and fires. The enemy fighter, still banking, never even knew it had been targeted. The theory that flanking will expose the Raptor is dead, because the Raptor isn't a directional threat. It's omnidirectional death. By the time you think you've flanked it, it's already behind you. In the shadowy halls of the GRU's Aerospace Analysis Division, something had gone terribly wrong, and now, even post-Soviet intelligence officials couldn't deny it. For decades, Soviet and Russian spy networks had been world-class at acquiring foreign military secrets. They'd stolen blueprints, intercepted communications, turned engineers into assets. But with the F-22, none of it had worked. Not fully, not in time. By the time the Raptor became operational, Russian analysts had already failed to predict 2 of its most lethal capabilities. 1. True supermaneuverability without compromise. During the Cold War, Soviet designers were proud of their high-alpha designs. The Su-27 and MiG-29 were kings of post-stall agility. Western jets, by contrast, had historically prioritized stability. But the F-22 broke this assumption. It wasn't just fast. It could pivot in 3 dimensions, hold altitude at near-zero airspeed, and snap angles no 4th-gen fighter could survive. This wasn't theory, it was combat-proven. Raptors defeated enemy fighters at close range without ever stalling, using a thrust vectoring system that let them turn inside their own turn radius. And yet, Russian analysts had downplayed its effectiveness. They believed American pilots would never risk the complex maneuvers it enabled. But at red flag, Raptors used them routinely and ruthlessly. 2. AESA radar that didn't give itself away. Traditional fighter radars were active systems. The moment you painted an enemy, you gave away your own position, the electromagnetic equivalent of yelling in a dark room. But the F-22's APG-77 radar was different. It could scan, track, and engage targets using frequency-hopping beams that remained nearly undetectable. It could scan 120 degrees off boresight, track multiple targets simultaneously, and never alert the enemy. Even Russian electronic warfare suites failed to register when they were being watched or targeted. The GRU's mistake was assuming American stealth began and ended with the airframe. They missed the software, the fusion systems, the electronic warfare that made the Raptor a complete ecosystem. Internal reports leaked years later revealed the failure in grim detail. We underestimated its sensor fusion, we failed to model its radar agility, and we did not anticipate the coordination between data systems, radar, EW, and pilot interface. This is not a fighter. It is a hunter. The GRU hadn't just missed the plane, they'd missed the paradigm. Even attempts to simulate Raptor engagements in Russian tactical simulators produced unwinnable scenarios. The simulated MiG-29 and Su-27 could not close distance, could not detect until too late, and could not survive the merge. By 2008, one senior Russian aerospace strategist concluded, "We built for speed and numbers. They built for invisibility and certainty." The F-22 didn't just hide its struck without detection. It didn't just evade, it outmaneuvered. And it didn't just fly, it rewrote air combat from radar to missile lock. For Soviet and Russian intelligence communities, the ultimate nightmare had come true. They had seen the future of air combat, and it was flying above them, invisible and untouchable. The Soviets built fighters. The Americans built dominance. To understand the F-22 Raptor is to understand not just an aircraft, but an entire system of air superiority, engineered from the ground up to shatter every pillar of Soviet and post-Soviet aerial doctrine. Start with the frame. The F-22 blends stealth shaping, radar-absorbing coatings, and zero-compromise aerodynamics into a single deadly platform. Every angle, every seam, every internal bay was designed for one purpose: to vanish. It wasn't just stealth. It was persistent invisibility. Radar cross-section? Just 0.0001 square meters smaller than a steel marble. Most MiG-29 and Su-27 could track aircraft at 90 to 120 kilometers. The Raptor could approach to under 20 kilometers before even appearing, and by then, it had already fired. Next, the radar. The APG-77 AESA radar is the brain behind the kill. Unlike legacy radars, it scans not with a sweeping dish, but with 1,500+ tiny transmitters, each beaming precise signals that never reveal the Raptor's position. It can track 20+ targets simultaneously, prioritize threats, guide multiple missiles, and jam hostile radars all at once. But what truly terrified adversaries was how the F-22 integrated it all. This was the first jet with true sensor fusion, a real-time data engine combining radar, infrared sensors, electronic warfare input, satellite feeds, friend or foe recognition house, pilot helmet tracking. It gave the pilot a 360-degree battle space picture, layered in color-coded targets, missile trajectories, threat rings, and timing all before the enemy had radar lock. Meanwhile, the weapons stayed hidden. All armament AIM-120D AMRAAMs, AIM-9X Sidewinders, and the internal M61 Vulcan cannon was housed inside. No wing pylons, no drag, no radar reflection. The Raptor could release 6 AMRAAMs and 2 Sidewinders, then pull 9 G-turns without ever exposing a weapons mount to radar. And propulsion? Nothing came close. The twin Pratt & Whitney F119 PW100 turbofans gave it 35,000 pounds of thrust per engine, plus full 2D thrust vectoring controlled by flight software so refined it allowed pitch, yaw, and roll simultaneously mid-turn. Supercruise? The Raptor hit Mach 1.8 plus without afterburners, meaning it could arrive, kill, and exit without ever glowing on infrared sensors. It wasn't a machine that simply won in combat. It was a platform that rendered combat one-sided. And then came the force behind it. The U.S. Air Force's kill web. The Raptor was never alone. It was integrated into AWACS aircraft for wide area detection, Link, 16 networks for real-time target sharing, J-STARS, command for ground-to-air coordination, satellite communications for over-the-horizon tracking. A MiG pilot might spot a blip. A Su-27 might get a flash of IR signature. But by then, the Raptor already had the launch solution. Even electronic warfare couldn't save them. The F-22's AN/ALR-94EW suite could sense enemy radar emissions long before lock, identify the radar type, jam or spoof it, and direct the pilot to strike or evade all autonomously. Every Soviet-era doctrine, speed, close combat, radar lock, multiplane tracking was outdated the moment the Raptor entered the sky. And in battle, the results were devastating. In red flag exercises, Raptors achieved simulated kill ratios of 144-0. Not one simulated loss. Not one successful enemy lock-on. It didn't just outperform its opponents, it embarrassed them. The MiG-29 was a scalpel. The Su-27 was a hammer. But the Raptor? It was the bullet you never heard. January 2006. Red flag 0-6-1. The F-22 is no longer a prototype. It is now an operational frontline fighter, assigned to the 27th Fighter Squadron of the 1st Fighter Wing, Langley Air Force Base, and it's about to enter full-scale combat simulations against the best fighters America and its allies can field. The exercise simulates high-intensity air war, multi-wave attacks, electronic jamming, dispersed aerial threats across hundreds of kilometers, MiG-29 analogs, Su-27 analogs, even Eurofighters, flown by seasoned RAF pilots. And yet when the data is compiled, the world learns the truth. 144 simulated kills, 0 Raptor losses. The opposing force, made up of legacy 4th-generation aircraft, never stood a chance. They never saw the Raptors coming. They never locked on. They never survived past the first engagement. Observers described it as one-sided to the point of embarrassment. It wasn't a battle. It was a ghost story. Veteran pilots flying F-15 seconds and F-16 seconds admitted it was demoralizing. We'd be flying perfect intercept profiles, and then boom, killed. We never even saw them. One foreign pilot, trained in Su-27 tactics, was recorded saying, "This thing doesn't fight. It executes." Even worse for adversaries. The Raptor wasn't even using its full loadout. No external fuel tanks, no pylons, no added countermeasures. It was operating in pure stealth configuration. During one engagement, a Raptor simulated destroying 5 aircraft in a single sortie without any of them detecting it. After the kill, it reversed course, outran pursuit, and returned to base without breaching radio silence. Ground-based radar? Blinded. IRST scans? Confused by countermeasures. Missile warnings? Too late. There was no contest. Not in BVR, not in close range, not even in coordinated team-on-one ambushes. In one case, 2 F-15Cs and 2 F-16 attempted a flanking maneuver to trap the Raptor between converging radar cones. Within seconds, both teams were splashed. The Raptor had already looped behind them and fired. Post-exercise debriefs were filled with phrases like, untrackable, too fast to intercept, no heat signature, we flew blind. And it wasn't just one lucky aircraft. Every Raptor performed this way. One commander summed it up simply, it's not the best dogfighter in the world. It's the aircraft that made dogfighting irrelevant. The implications were devastating for any air force still relying on Soviet-era doctrine. Every MiG pilot who trained to get within missile range, to pull Gs and outturn the enemy, had just watched their entire playbook burn. Their tools, radar, IRST, close-range missiles were obsolete in the Raptor's battle space. They brought knives. The Raptor brought a sniper rifle, and night vision, and silence. For the Russian defense establishment, the Raptor's performance was worse than a wake-up call. It was a funeral for fourth-generation air combat, because in the skies over Nevada, the old masters of maneuver were erased by a machine they never saw. When the data from Red Flag 06-1 reached international defense circles, it didn't spark debate. It sparked denial, then fear, and finally, collapse not on the battlefield, but inside military doctrines, think tanks, and war colleges across the post-Soviet world. The MiG and Sukhoi design bureaus had always operated on a shared belief with the Soviet Air Force that air superiority could be bought with speed, agility, and numbers. Soviet planners had counted on swarm tactics, visual contact, and radar saturation. Now, all of that was gone. In its place stood a reality no one wanted to accept. The F-22 rendered legacy doctrine irrelevant. What good was supercruise in the MiG-31 if the enemy saw you first and never turned on its own radar? What good was the Su-27's super maneuverability if the fight ended 80 kilometers away with a silent AMRAAM launch? The idea of the merge, the holy grail of Soviet air combat, was dead. Russian officers scrambled to adapt. Training manuals were quietly revised. New proposals for digital avionics and AESA radars were rushed into development. Electronic warfare divisions were tasked with finding radar signatures that no longer existed. Engineers proposed modifications to the Su-35 and MiG-35, hoping to close the gap with sensor fusion and limited radar stealth. But the F-22 wasn't just a new plane. It was the airborne embodiment of strategic overmatch. It meant every fourth-generation platform, MiG-29, Su-30, even the upcoming MiG-35, was now a second-tier fighter the moment it took off. Even a highly trained pilot couldn't outfight what they couldn't detect, couldn't track, and couldn't outmaneuver. Worse still, the U.S. wasn't stopping. Whispers of sixth-generation successors to the Raptor were already making their way through Western defense circles, platforms with full autonomy, AI integration, drone swarms, and hypersonic reach. Soviet-era air power had one final defense: denial. Some Russian officers claimed the red flag data was exaggerated. Others insisted that ground-based radar or anti-stealth SAMs would eventually neutralize Raptors. But the numbers didn't lie. The exercises were simulated, yes, but they were based on physics, sensors, weapons ranges, and real-time pilot decision loops. And they were repeated, consistently, globally. In those numbers, one conclusion became undeniable. Air dominance was no longer shared. There weren't two superpowers dividing the sky. There was one, and everyone else was flying in its shadow. For the first time since the MiG-15 terrorized the skies over Korea, Russian air doctrine faced the same sobering truth. The future had arrived, and they weren't in it. Today, the F-22 Raptor still flies. Its numbers are limited. Its production line was closed in 2011. But the machine itself, the design, the doctrine, the impact remains untouched by any rival. Even Russia's most advanced platforms, the Su-27, the MiG-35, the experimental stealth drones, still struggle to achieve what the Raptor made routine 2 decades ago. They may be newer, they may be cheaper, but none have defeated a Raptor. None have even truly faced one in combat, and that is its power. The F-22 doesn't need to dogfight. It doesn't need to fly over enemy territory. Its reputation alone, backed by data, kill ratios, and pilot testimony, casts a shadow that lingers across every theater it enters. In Syria, reports surfaced of Raptors entering contested airspace, unchallenged. Russian Su-27s flew nearby. They never got tone. They never got radar lock. They never got close. The Cold War built a mythos around Soviet engineering. The MiG as the great equalizer, the jet that would rise against Western superiority. But the Raptor shattered that myth, because the Raptor wasn't built to fight Cold War battles. It was built to end them before they even began. No radar, no lock, no warning. Just a missile strike and silence. For every Soviet pilot who once dismissed American stealth as fantasy, for every engineer who thought raw speed could outmatch innovation, the Raptor became their reckoning. It wasn't just a jet. It was a final answer to every question the Cold War left unresolved. Can America dominate without warning? Can a single fighter rule the skies? Can stealth become absolute? Yes, yes, and yes. And in hangars across the world, the Raptor sleeps under armed guard, its skin still flawless, its software updated, its engines ready, waiting. Because if ever again the skies are contested, the ghost will return, and it won't fight fair. It never had to.